Somewhere along your journey of awakening, maybe triggered by a sudden spiritual insight, a long simmering inner tension, or even a complete personal breakdown, you suddenly felt something shift deep within you. It wasn't a loud explosion of understanding, it was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a current running beneath the surface of your consciousness. Then, gradually, it grew. You began to see the illusions that had quietly shaped your life, the patterns you didn't notice, the repetitive cycles that trapped your mind, the noise of expectations and social conditioning. And then, silence. At first, this silence felt powerful. It had weight, authority, a strange kind of liberation. You felt awake, alive in a way that had eluded you before. But then, almost imperceptibly, that sense of meaning began to vanish. Not in a dramatic collapse, not in a single catastrophic moment, but quietly, like the slow fading of a familiar melody. It was as if your soul had gently turned down the volume on life, and then simply forgot to turn it back up. You stopped chasing. You stopped caring. Not recklessly, not in a way that screamed detachment, but with the soft, hollow sigh of existential stillness. And as this silence deepened, a question began to whisper louder and louder. Why do I feel so numb now that I finally see the truth? There's a paradox here, a contradiction that few talk about openly. We grow up hearing that spiritual awakening will ignite passion, that it will light a fire under our lives, that clarity and purpose will suddenly surge through us. And yet, for many, especially the deeply introspective, the empaths, the seekers who have always felt the world more acutely than most, it does the opposite. Awakening can empty you. I remember a friend, brilliant and curious, a person who devoured the works of Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts and J. Krishnamurti. She had undergone what she described as a massive awakening following a profound dark night of the soul. She said she finally understood the illusions of identity, the futility of chasing external success, and the hollow chase of ego-driven desires. And yet 2 months later, she was lying awake at night, staring at her ceiling, unable to lift herself out of bed. She confessed, "I used to cry over not achieving enough. Now, I don't care whether I do anything at all. I thought awakening would light me up. Instead, I feel empty." This post-awakening emptiness is not unusual, and it is not a sign of failure. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, recognized it long before it became a trending topic on social media. He never framed it in the glib, Instagram-ready language we see today. Instead, he understood the profound consequence of the unconscious becoming conscious. Enlightenment does not come by imagining figures of light, he wrote, but by making the darkness conscious. Beautiful words, but terrifying in implication. Awakening is not the end, it is the beginning of a psychological death, the death of who you thought you were. The scaffolding of your life, your goals, career plans, relationships, even your habitual sense of time can all begin to collapse. Here's the kicker. Your ego isn't gone. It's lost, disoriented, wandering in a landscape it no longer recognizes. Without a new map, motivation disappears. This isn't laziness. This isn't clinical depression. This is a liminal state. You've woken up from something, but haven't yet woken up into something else. And yet, most people mistake it for failure or worse, a personal flaw. Here's where it becomes fascinating and deeply misunderstood. What you are experiencing isn't something to fix. It isn't brokenness. It isn't a defect. It is ancient, sacred, and profoundly natural. Jung warned that our modern society avoids this stage at all costs, this sacred pause, the void, the in-between, is essential. It's the bridge between the old self and the emerging self. It is, in his terms, an essential phase of individuation, the process of becoming your authentic, integrated self. But who talks about this? Who warns you that this is part of the journey? Few, if any. And that's exactly what we're about to explore. What is actually happening in your psyche after awakening, and why losing your old sense of motivation might be the most profound spiritual upgrade you've ever received, if you understand it correctly. Before we continue, a quick note. If you're someone who loves to expand your mind, dive into the hidden layers of consciousness, and explore the strange, wild dimensions of awakening, consider subscribing to Fractal Wisdom. This channel exists to make the invisible visible and guide those navigating this often confusing, sometimes terrifying, but ultimately transformative path. So if you've been drifting in the post-awakening fog, wondering why your spark has vanished, let me assure you, you are not crazy. You are undergoing a psychological recalibration so profound that most people wouldn't even recognize it as a shift. The goals you chased, the daily grind, the endless to-do lists, the 5-year plans, the motivational playlists, they no longer move you. And not because you've failed, not because you lack discipline. It's because your motivation system itself is collapsing, recalibrating, preparing for a new kind of energy. And Jung saw this coming long before social media made spiritual awakening a meme. Let's break this down. For most of your life, your drive came from your ego identity, the me you thought you were. You wanted to be recognized, admired, loved. You wanted to prove yourself, succeed, and be seen. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural part of human development. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. But awakening strips away the mask. Suddenly, you are no longer playing the social game in the same way. Your old goals, once perfectly aligned with your persona, no longer fit. It's like being a character who has stepped off stage, suddenly forgetting their lines, unsure what role to play next. And this is why you feel unmotivated. You haven't lost drive. You've outgrown the fuel that powered it. Jung emphasized that we are not here to serve the ego. We are here to integrate it, to align it with something greater. He called this process individuation, transforming a fragmented identity into a unified whole self. Not the small self craving praise, but the transcendent self, the soul-level center that connects to everything. And this self doesn't chase status, approval, or even clarity. It seeks only to express truth. Once awakening occurs, your psyche begins to recalibrate. It rejects anything artificial, forced, or ego-driven. Jobs, relationships, ambitions, even meticulously crafted dream boards from years past. Awakening is both liberating and disorienting. Some people, failing to navigate this stage, fall into spiritual bypassing, convincing themselves nothing matters, floating in numbness, mistaking detachment for disengagement. But the self is calling for something different. It wants to live through you. It wants to bring heaven into the human body. It doesn't reject the world. It redefines your relationship with it. To step into this, you must pass through the weird middle phase Jung described so well, a phase rarely recognized while you're in it. This phase is not glamorous. It doesn't garner Instagram likes. It isn't about meditating in golden sunlight or penning profound captions. It looks like sitting in silence, struggling to explain yourself while the world rushes by. Jung would say you're not lost, you're in between. You've disidentified from ego, but haven't yet found a new way to live through the self. This is not failure, it is a rite of passage. In our hyper-productive society, stillness is misread as laziness. Pause is misdiagnosed as paralysis. We judge ourselves, and that judgment blocks the very energy the soul is trying to restore. Jung called this enantiodromia, the process by which things turn into their opposite. When you awaken, the inner pendulum swings from ego-driven striving to soul-level stillness. You go from "I must do everything" to "why do anything?" This swing is sacred. It restores balance. In mythology, this is the hermit phase, the death before rebirth. The caterpillar becomes soup inside the cocoon. Not yet a butterfly, not quite a bug, just goo. And yes, goo doesn't hustle, it dissolves. The ego panics, it demands action, identity, and direction, but the self whispers, "Let go. I am building something deeper." Modern spirituality often skips this difficult, messy part. Follow your joy. High vibes only, they say. But Jung would caution, skip the darkness and you skip the gold. Shadow integration, confronting the repressed, uncomfortable aspects of self, is essential. It's not optional. It's the core curriculum of the human soul. This sacred emptiness is where the unconscious finally has room to emerge. You are not failing. You are metabolizing. Your psyche is wise. It stalls motivation, energy, even clarity of purpose, forcing you to feel, witness, and reclaim what has been buried. And here's the beautiful twist. When you stop resisting the void, motivation returns, but it feels different. Not anxious, not performative, not hustle-driven. It is quieter, older, soul-led, a remembering rather than chasing. It's an inner rhythm that doesn't demand proving yourself to the world. It simply asks you to listen, to respond, to flow. Jung called this emergence of the self not a concept, but a living inner compass, guiding you through the shadows and the silence, toward wholeness that cannot be rushed or fabricated. The first being about survival, it becomes about meaning. And here's a truth that surprises many. It's often beautifully ordinary. When the self leads, you respond instead of hustle. You are guided by alignment, not FOMO. Clarity arrives, you don't chase it. Living from the self doesn't guarantee constant motivation. You may still feel fatigue, confusion, grief, but you shed that inner betrayal of living a misaligned life. You create quietly. Say no to what doesn't resonate. Follow curiosity. Choose peace over performance. This is the new fuel, not adrenaline, but alignment. Jung called it living symbolically, trusting inner imagery, dreams, synchronicities, gut feelings as guidance. Questions shift from "what should I do" to "what's calling me." Ambition transforms into devotion to truth, presence, and growth. This energy is quieter yet remarkably potent. It moves without force, achieves without strain. And ironically, it often accomplishes far more than ego-driven hustle, sustainably, deeply, profoundly. So if you feel your spark is gone after awakening, it is the old fire burned down to reveal a deeper flame, one that does not flicker with external winds, one that thrives in silence and stillness. Jung didn't promise an easy path. If you're listening now, you're already walking it. The goal isn't to reclaim old motivation. It's to discover a new one, rooted in wholeness, not performance, in presence, not approval. This is not the end of awakening. It is the beginning of your becoming. A life guided by inner truth rather than outer expectation, where every choice resonates with the soul's rhythm. If this resonates, drop a comment below. Share what this journey has felt like for you. And if you want more content exploring psychology, soul, and self-awareness in ways that truly make sense, subscribe to Fractal Wisdom. Awakening isn't the end. It's where the real story begins.